Well, switching gears in a big way. As you know, of course, I was in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest last week, and among other things, had an interesting field trip to one neighborhood in Austin. Take a listen.
East of downtown Austin, Texas, in a residential neighborhood, you'll find an unusual looking house. The exterior walls are undulating, layered cement curves. But it's not just the look of the house that's unusual. Those walls were constructed with a giant 3D printer, the Vulcan. 46.5 feet long, 15.5 feet tall, and weighing in at 9,500 pounds. The company behind it, Icon, is trying to revolutionize the housing business. They call it House Zero.
This house represents sort of a 4-year journey to get to this moment. And at Icon, we're a construction technologies company, and we are developing advanced construction technologies, most notably construction scale 3D printers, but to really drive housing affordability, housing speed of delivery, housing sustainability, things like that forward in the world, because there's this global housing crisis.
Ballard says Icon developed House Zero in cooperation with local architects Lake Flato when his team realized that they could push the boundaries of traditional design.
3D printing and robotic construction actually enables us to do a lot of things we probably should have been doing all along and wish that we could have done, but were too expensive until this moment. Specifically in this house, some of the things we really showed off is the ability to incorporate curves and slopes in these very organic forms, but also a lot of those curves and forms that you introduce actually add structure and strength to the wall.
House Zero isn't for sale, but the company has constructed houses in Tabasco, Mexico in cooperation with a nonprofit. Its most ambitious project yet, a 100-home community in partnership with home builder Lennar, is scheduled to break ground this year.
We need to be building millions of homes, and I hope in my own lifetime. I think in the future, neighborhoods and then towns and then eventually cities will be built by robots and drones. And I think that future will be faster, more affordable, with more design freedom.
So obviously, Saz, it's a really interesting, cool house to be in. I think it's safe to say. And it's interesting, those layers of cement, they're sort of rough looking if you get up close, but obviously they can also put coatings on it. And that development that they're building with Lennar will not look quite as sort of experimental or design forward as that House Zero. Even though the bones of it will be quite different and it'll be differently constructed, it will look a bit more like a conventional house.
Julia, are these coming to Long Island? I mean, I'm just watching that video here. That could be my first house. I like those curves. This is the ultimate influencer house, it looks to me. I mean, I can imagine putting out some great videos next to those concrete walls.
I'm sure that you could. I think that they're starting small, and obviously, as you heard from his last discussion point, they have very large aspirations here in terms of building eventually many of these houses. It's funny, by the way, when we were talking about that Lennar development in Austin, they're being very quiet about exactly where it's going to be. They say it's the Austin area, and they're not giving details about when exactly they're breaking ground. Because you put one of these things, one of these huge printers in a neighborhood, and you start that process, lots of people show up to watch it.
How much are those? How much are the houses?
Well, they're not yet. They're still figuring out the pricing, actually. But they have been getting a lot of requests and a lot of demand, but it's not clear yet. And since that House Zero home is not for sale, that house is sort of a top of the line house. The finishes are top of the line because it was meant to be a show house. It's got Douglas fir. It's not all constructed with that cement mixture. It's got windows that are made of glass. The roof is not made of that. And then it has Douglas fir trim. So that's a top of the line, but they're not selling it. So there's no price on that. So it's not clear yet exactly. But the idea behind this is because he says this part of the construction process is cheaper, it will end up costing comparable with a regular home. But as he says, you can do sort of design things and elements that you wouldn't be able to afford to do in a typical home. So kind of an interesting concept there.
Yeah, very cool. They didn't have a lawn, right? I'm looking for something without a lawn. I want rocks. I don't want to mow anything.
It did have a lawn. It did have I'm sure that you could customize.
I want to edit it out.
Kind of.
I don't want any.
And you
lawn.
also don't have to. It's not just lawn or rocks. You could just plant other plants that are low maintenance on the lawn too. Something to consider for you suburbanite on Long Island.